Welcome back to another podcast. You guys are going to love this one because we are going to dive into digital asset treasuries in the XRP front. And we are going to have a special guest who is the Chief Executive Officer of Evernorth. You know them quite a bit out there. And of course, that is Asheesh Birla. He will be joining us very soon. Before we get started on all that, I, of course, want to thank our sponsors and our partners, which has been an absolute great partnership. And that, of course, has been with Uphold. If you guys are not checking out Uphold, you should be. It is one of the places where you guys can earn crypto better. Tons of staking rewards available over there at Uphold, along with this feature right here, which is the new tokens and the early access. Probably one of the best things I like about Uphold is they give you a drop when they list a new token or have it available for purchase. So that's kind of a little bit of a cheat code that you guys can use. And best of all, you got to go over and get the XRP. I won't call it the XRP rewards card, but that's what it is, I feel like, because it's the debit card from Uphold that gives you XRP rewards in exchange. Earn up to 4% on everything you buy. It's up for 3 months. You can also stack a little bit of rewards as well if you're doing direct deposit. So there's so many ways to work with Uphold. Check them out. Use our link down below. You guys will love it to get started. I want to bring in Asheesh Birla, who is coming in from Evernorth. You guys have seen this before. And Asheesh, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me on, Paul. It's I've been an avid follower of your work, and you've been a great help to the XRP community, and that's a pleasure to finally get on.
Yeah, it's been good. Listen, we have talked with a lot of Wall Street people around what's happening up there in terms of just the institutional side of things. Now, I want to go and start with the macro shift that is clearly appearing because we have kind of exited the casino era of crypto. We're entering the utility era. Obviously, what we'll see with regulation and the Clarity Act, this is all going to be coming on pretty hard. First of all, you mentioned a little bit about the pilot phase that we've seen. Why do you think that's finally dead? And is it the tech is better? Is there less legal risk? What are you guys seeing out there?
Well, that's a great question. And listen, this is my 13th year in crypto, so I've been waiting for this moment. And every year I said it was the next year, but this is the year. And Paul, I'll tell you a little bit about why I feel that this is the year. Number one, that regulatory clarity that we've been waiting for is finally here. We have the SEC that is being proactive about this innovative technology that, in my opinion, will change finance forever. And it's not just happening in the United States, Paul. I'm hearing it's happening in Korea, it's happening in Japan, it's happening around the world. So that regulatory clarity is coming. We have the Clarity Act that's making its way through the government. The Genius Act was such a big boost to stablecoin adoption. And that's the first sort of rung here. And then the second area is that the tech, Paul, the tech is now becoming what I call institutional grade. You got banking charters, you got qualified custodians, you got all that robust infrastructure that is ready for prime time. And the missing piece that I saw was around institutional capital. So you got the regulatory clarity, you got the product, you got the tech, now the institutional capital. And that's really where I see Evernorth, playing. We're going to, deploy institutional capital into the DeFi ecosystem in the future on top of the XRP ecosystem itself. Those three things are going to make, in my opinion, this work utility wise.
Yeah.
And
Talk to
beyond.
me why you think you look at the Michael Saylor strategy for what strategy has done is kind of the leading, the leading a digital asset treasury out there, which is a little bit of a different because it's mostly investing capital that's not necessarily going to work outside of speculative. What you guys have done is a bit of a different approach. Explain your approach versus what we've seen in traditional DAT programs out there.
Yeah, so my background is a product guy, and being, I think the one of the first product people in crypto. I'm coming at it from a product lens. I think
Mhm.
Michael Saylor has done a great job of coming at it from a financial engineering lens.
Yeah.
What's exciting about where I want to head into the future is we can build a product on the XRP ecosystem together, with the community, and then we can take that institutional capital from Evernorth and potentially deploy it on the XRP DeFi ecosystem and earn yield on that. So it's like a one-two punch. We could get out there and help develop that ecosystem from a technical standpoint, and then we can bring the capital in the future from the Evernorth Treasury standpoint. That's very different than what you're seeing from a lot of other DApps.
Yes.
A lot of other DApps are about pure play exposure,
Mhm.
levered exposure, and financial engineering. And I think, Paul, as you put it, we're about helping develop that ecosystem on top of the XRP ecosystem and DeFi ecosystem, and then deploying capital to generate yield on top of that.
Okay, so this is, I think for some investors in Wall Street, to your point, is a lot of times they have looked at DATs strictly as that vehicle of just pure exposure. The MNAV is a little bit of a rotation that many people will look at. Then you have a handful of DATs who are actually putting some of this effort to work. Do you think Wall Street has given the asset treasury companies the credit for this yet, or do you think that's coming down the pipeline?
Well, from what I've seen, I think there's very few companies doing or digital asset treasuries being proactive in the ecosystem. I think most of if you look at the operational teams behind these other digital asset treasuries, and not all, but a lot of them, they don't have a product background. They may have a marketing background, they may have a financial engineering background, but they don't have a product background. And you got to prove it to the market. And again, like you gotta have that vision, and then you got to execute against that vision. And I
Yeah.
think that, in my opinion, I think that Wall Street will reward those that show that they can actually build the ecosystem and generate utility yield from their efforts as well. And so it's early days, Paul. The digital asset treasury space is emerging. There was a flood, I guess maybe in the treasury summer of
Yeah.
2025. There was a flood of new digital asset treasuries. And just like in crypto, there'll be the winners and there'll be the losers for
Exactly.
sure.
Well, if you look at, because this is the way I explain it to some people, if you look at MicroStrategy, basically they're wanting to increase the Bitcoin price. And the way they have to do that is they issue more stock or debt, to go out and buy more coins. So it's kind of an external capital raise. You guys are a little bit different in the sense that you're earning yield. You could get out and increase liquidity on the XRP Ledger, which is really non-dilutive growth. This is a different way to do it for sure. Why have we not seen more asset treasury companies doing this right now?
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, listen, like the micro sailor strategy was a strategy that a lot of people, like I like to say, is Control C, Control V, copy and
Yeah.
paste. And I come at it from a product lens and an innovator's lens, right? We need to go beyond what everyone else is doing, because I knew that this market was going to change over time. And hey, there are some things that MicroStrategy does well, but I do think that these digital asset treasuries out there needs to be stewards of the ecosystems that they're part of. That's good for the ecosystem. It's going to be good for the digital asset treasuries. I'll say that you need a lot of experience to pull that off. And the team that we built at Evernorth, I pulled a lot of my former colleagues from Ripple, former investors in the space. I pulled the brightest minds together to help execute on more of a product vision and not a financial engineering vision that you see from MicroStrategy. And again, that's just a different way to go about building a robust, company for the long term.
Yeah, you look at the Clarity Act. This, of course, solves one of the big challenges, which is the SEC versus the CFTC, a bit of a turf war. No longer, it feels like right now with Atkins and also the new chair of the CFTC, you've got kind of a scenario here that, well, for sure, a scenario that's going to create a new statutory definition for digital commodities and investment contract assets. So all of this is moving in the right direction. I guess with the new rules that will be in place, this is going to open up a lot of liquidity pools, especially by Fortune 500 treasury companies who now could go into this. Do you think we're about to see an onslaught of those kinds of companies coming into the market outside of just the regular, Wall Street fortune asset managers?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a very good question. One of the big benefits that I see that corporate treasuries could potentially use this technology for, again, with the Clarity Act coming into fruition here, is to programmatically manage their treasury. So I was on the board of a lot of big companies that had massive treasuries, and I'd walk through the halls of these treasuries and of these companies, and you have whole departments that are just focused on FX and treasury management. And now with this technology, you can actually build and programatize a lot of those functions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And listen, like you can use those resources for other areas like, hey, customer service and all these other areas. So and that'll help grow a company. But I'm excited about the first companies coming in and using this space and this technology for corporate treasury management. That's going to be an exciting space. And listen, the liquidity is coming, right? I think 1.3% of all money supply is now tokenized as a stable coin, according to some reports. And that is only 6 months since the Genius Act
That's crazy.
has cast, right? So
Huge.
we are in the early innings, but that is a big, a small percentage of a massive number. So I'm excited for where that's headed.
Another thing that I don't think a lot of people really understand is this is kind of a holy grail for TradFi because once the Clarity Act gets in, would this not kind of bridge, I guess in a way, the KYC era of finance in TradFi now going into all these permissionless pools that we're seeing in DeFi? Is this kind of like the best of both worlds where they're gaining access through a company like yours who is gaining yield and benefits by going into these permissionless pools?
Yeah, so that your question is a good one in that I think for institutions to adopt, there needs to be we need to remove friction, we need to remove middlemen,
Yeah,
but it has to be institutional grade. And what that means is that it's got to stand up from the security standpoint, but it's got to be compliant. And so there are ways and really interesting technologies that I'm seeing that allow you to like be compliant, KYC, travel rule, and so forth, and also participate in these like new emerging institutional liquidity pools.
right.
And that is really where you're going to see a lot of action, in my opinion, in the next few years. These institutional grade liquidity pools. Why? Because fewer middlemen in the way. Number two, less manual, less calling. You know how much of TradFi is done still on the phone. I mean, maybe we got rid of the fax, but we're still calling up people. But you can programatize it now using this technology, and then you can automate that. And that is like I think understated in what this future is going to bring in terms of efficiency.
Well, it definitely is going to change, I think, all things in traditional finance. I see this extending into, we've talked about it shortly, is extending into some of these Fortune 500 treasuries, and possibly we could see this even trickle down into some of the top 5,000 companies here in the United States that are starting to change the way they think about markets in general. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a golden age, as Trump says, coming at us. One other thing I wanted
It's
to
going to be
touch.
interesting, Paul. Like, one interesting thing on the Treasury side is like one of the first use cases that I saw for corporate Treasury was a company in Mexico City, and they got funding in US dollars. And what they wanted to do is keep that funding in US dollars, but actually have the operational capital in pesos to pay their employees. And so we worked on developing something where they could instantly convert from US dollars to pesos when they needed to do payroll, for example, in almost real time. And that was a game changer for them. Again, they were a smaller company, but that I saw that future, back in 2000, 17, 18. And again, I think you're right on with this corporate treasury, point of view where, hey, other corporates, larger corporates are going to see that same use case
Yeah,
of managing global treasury around the world using this technology, which
huge.
I'm excited about.
I don't even know how to put a pencil to that. It's almost like the birth of the internet when you look at where this is going on, of where it will affect finance, businesses of all types, which is really kind of what our channel has been talking about for many, many years, is that this is going to happen once regulatory framework gets in place. Let's move over to the question of the why, and that is around XRP. Obviously, this token is one that has been highly contested out there for a while, and it's also one that gets ridiculous, crazy love and hate. It has a unique legal standing, now. So, a federal judge explicitly ruling that this is not a security. So, with all of that kind of pressure, because you could have easily gone maybe Bitcoin or ETH, why XRP? What was the goal here?
Well, one, I'm definitely familiar with XRP. It's been the backbone of a lot of the products that I've built in the past. Hey, listen, like a lot of the first properties that you heard of around XRP, it's fast. It's built for payments.
Right.
It's got a liquidity engine built into it via a decentralized exchange. By the way, this was 2012. Now you're seeing copycats, 10 years, 10, 15 years later. The XRP was built for institutional grade products for real utility. You need more than a digital asset to make it work for the global FX market. You need more than a digital asset to make it great for payments. And that combined with the regulatory clarity around XRP, I made it a no brainer. My vision and what I am passionate about is changing the world of finance for the better. And there's a lot of other use cases around, digital assets, from meme coins to the casino, as you put it, and a lot of other things. Great. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is the future of finance. And I believe that the XRP ecosystem is building that for institutions. And that is going to be, a catalyst in terms of change. And we've been at this, during my time at Ripple, we've been at this for a long time.
Yeah.
And working with institutions over the years, you sort of understand what they need to use this technology as well. So I'm excited about that. Listen, like it's being early often takes a long time.
Mhm.
But as we started this segment off, hey, I think that timing is here because of those three different aspects: regulatory clarity, product is ready, and now you have institutional capital coming into the fold.
Yeah, you see this in a lot of technology adoption over the years, whether it is the internet, birth of mobile, birth of social. slow going, and then you get that all at once moment. And I feel like this is where we are heading right now. What about the narrative that is shifting? Because XRP has had the moniker of the banker's coin for many, many years. Now, with not only the strategic moves that Brad and Ripple have done, now they're creating more of an enterprise standard, which is kind of the necessity that you would need for infrastructure in the future. Do you think that has been one of the reasons that we're seeing institutions so interested in what's happening? I mean, the ETFs are on fire. I got a story here. It's crazy. What do you think is driving this?
Yeah, well, hey, like at the beginning, so I go back to the my early days in crypto and in blockchain, and it was all about, hey, like let's get rid of the institutions. We don't need banks.
Yeah,
And listen, it wasn't popular, but I think the narrative that we pushed at Ripple was, hey, listen, this isn't about destruction. This is about evolution. Let's bring the banks, let's bring the institutions along. And guess what? 10 years later, that's what's happening, right? Like that's what's driving the interest in this ecosystem and crypto, in my opinion. Just that great article that you brought up around
yeah,
ETFs.
yeah.
Uh, Now, what's also happening is that it's becoming easier. So, if you remember, even a couple of years ago, if you wanted to get exposure, if you wanted to participate in the ecosystem, you had to get your own wallet, or you had to go to Coinbase. You had
Right.
to worry about security. Oh, how do I deal with taxes? Well, with owning a stock like Evernorth, XRPN, you're familiar with owning a stock. You know how to, do the reporting around it. And the security is done for you. It's a lot easier to participate in the ecosystem in 2026 than it was, even a couple of years ago. That's making it easier, as you see in the history of every product out there, starting with the iPhone, making it easier to use a mobile device tends to lead to increased adoption in the future, and I think that's what you're seeing as well. We're making it easier to allow institutions and individuals to use crypto in everyday life, but also to get exposure to this asset class.
So, Ashish, do you see that institutions are actually deploying XRP into workflows today, or is this still somewhat theoretical and they're working to getting more active with XRP use cases?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like building enterprise products takes a long time, and no one's been at that longer in the crypto ecosystem than Ripple. And so Ripple has that enterprise DNA, and I think they've made it seamless to use the XRP ecosystem underneath for moving money, for issuing stable coins, and so forth. And now you see, money market funds also participating on tokenizing that on the XRP ledger via Franklin Templeton last summer announced that. And so, that's where I see this going. Again, some of the acquisitions that they made as well will help institutions adopt this technology as well. And then in terms of folks that want to participate in exposure to the future of finance and DeFi on top of the XRP ecosystem, that's where you see Evernorth. And that's our goal
Yeah.
is like, hey, we're gonna make it easier for institutions to get exposure here, but then also we're going to help build that DeFi ecosystem. So we're going to be stewards of that XRP DeFi ecosystem in the future.
Well, and it is now a new world because it's such an enterprise layer. XRPL isn't just payments anymore. It's definitely evolved. A lot of the new features, automated market makers, we've seen decentralized identity for compliance, EVM side change now for programmability, which we talked to Flair and Hugo a few weeks back of what they've been able to do, which is going to open up, I think, a lot around DeFi. So, which is lending, borrowing. We're going to see all sorts of things in terms of new products coming on. how does the XRPL's native, like for instance, just the native DEX or in general, how does it compete or differ from, platforms like a Uniswap that's out there, especially in the institutional side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll say that when it comes to institutional adoption, uh, institutions want something that is proven, that's been out there for a while, that's not continually changing and evolving. Again, it has to stay current and innovative and stay with the times, but it can't be changing like and pivoting every quarter. And again, the methodology that the XRP ecosystem and platform adhere to is one of, hey, like let's measure twice and cut once. And so I like that these are sort of native features built into the ledger itself, and there will be more. You look at the spec. There's a lending spec out there as well that I'm excited about. But again, it'll be measured twice and then cut once, and that makes it more institutional grade. And then, hey, listen, there'll be Uniswap out there, and I think of that as maybe like the Bell Labs. They're going to be trying a whole bunch of new things. They're going to be trying that and with retail, clients. And hey, there may be some innovative things that other ecosystems can borrow and deploy more natively. But again, when you're building for institutions, you want something that's proven, you want something that's robust, and especially from a security standpoint, you cannot compromise that, especially with this new kind of technology.
Yeah, and like, we touched a little bit about you guys' model. So being, one of the first digital asset treasuries within the XRPL ecosystem, via SPAC merger, the model you guys are going in terms of not just holding the asset, but actually going out there and putting it to work. What kind of things do you think are coming, in terms of creative ways that DATs will start to put assets to work outside? I mean, is it all going to be in the DeFi space, or do you think there could be some other areas?
Like we will look at we'll do an exhaustive search for innovative partners that can help execute our vision. Like this isn't something that Evernorth is going to do on its own. I was just in Korea a couple of weeks ago. I'm going back in a couple of weeks ago. The amount of innovation and interest in Korea and Japan just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
And again, regulation also coming up in those two countries as well. So I'm excited about that. But there's also very interesting partners in those uh, two countries that are building technologies on top of the XRP Ledger that I'm excited about. And then listen, like working directly with the developers on the XRP platform, I'm excited about what's coming there. XLS 66 was something that the specs have been published out there. It helps with institutional lending. It's very well thought out, in my opinion, and that is something that we can potentially participate in terms of getting yield
Yeah.
and working with other partners as well to generate yield. So the more we can do it directly on the XRP ecosystem when it's ready, when it's robust, the better. But we'll look at traditional ways to generate yield as well in the more TradFi
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Well, we're seeing ETFs now opening up to where they've got yield vehicles. You look at what you guys are doing. If you compare this to, say, a MicroStrategy, which is, Bitcoin and storage and number go up. You guys, of course, putting it into the XRP DeFi protocols, this changes things quite a bit. Do you think the market is ready to price that risk in right now from a Wall Street standard right now around Fortune 500?
So we got to get out and tell our story. And listen, like we got to tell our story in a way that Wall Street is going to understand it, and then also we got to execute on that story. That's what we have planned for the next several months. And again, I'm personally really excited. about what's coming up on the XRP DeFi ecosystem, and I think there's a real story to tell there. I think a lot of folks have interpretations about what's going on the XRP ledger. I want to clarify that. And again, I see Evernorth as stewards of the XRP DeFi ecosystem, and we're gonna execute on that stewardship over the next several months.
We've been tracking a lot of DATs in general. It's like a pastime of our research team, and we're constantly watching some of the strategic moves, the warm handshakes we're seeing out of certain capital alignment right now. The talk of mergers, roll-ups, acquisitions is now starting to being floated out there a little bit. Do you think there's anything like that that could be in the future for you guys?
Yeah, hey, listen, I think that do you need a eighth Solana digital asset treasury? I think there's just a lot out there, and that's creating market confusion. What I'm proud of is that we are the leading XRP digital asset treasury out there. Will there be more? Maybe, but I anticipate that we will be a leader, in into the future because we're working on developing that XRP ecosystem as well. And in terms of roll-ups and hey, we're gonna look at other opportunities for sure, and we're gonna evaluate and just like any other digital asset treasury will. I think Evernorth comes at a position of strength. Uh, and if there's opportunities to execute our vision quicker, we'll look at that and get that kind of serious look. But again, there's a lot of these out there. I'm not sure that they're all going to survive necessarily.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of other, I mean, I look at the potential targets, whether it is someone like Trident or Vivo Power, Weebus, all those that are out there in the XRP Treasury game right now, and how this gets going, I think is going to be intriguing to say the least. Plus, I think there'll be a lot of opportunities around maybe white label custodians. I don't know if you've been following this, like what BitGo or Anchorage has been doing to where this plays into it. So, man, there's just so much happening in this space right now. What would you say for 2026 would be a surprise in the digital asset treasury space in general? Just in general, it could be Bitcoin, XRP, ETH, Solana, anything that you're, hey, watch out for this.
Well, hey, listen, I think that there, if you call it the Treasury summer of 2025, I think that there are going to be clear winners, in my opinion, and losers in 2026. Listen, I think there potentially is a shakeout here. I think folks that have the right kind of operational, team with experience are going to do well, in my opinion. And those that can execute and those that have a digital asset treasury as a side hustle, as the kids say, you will potentially, struggle.
Yeah.
This is a hard space to pull off, a win in. You need a dedicated team like the one that we have at Evernorth that is working on this day in and day and night to make this vision a reality. As you said, Paul, the ecosystem is changing so fast,
Very quick.
and you need to decide what's real and what's not. And you need to keep up with all that change and grab the opportunity that's relevant to you. And
Yeah.
again, that's sort of the magic in this space, right? There's a lot that you can chase, but what should you chase and what's right for your company, I think is important to winning in 2026.
My wild card is around maybe a mid-size acquisition, I don't know who's gonna do it. You look at maybe a cross-border payments processor that is more legacy oriented. I won't say names, but there's a handful of them out there that could be out there that could be looked at, because that would give you, an immediate rail with XRP on a retail, whether it's a retail or even a business to business front, that I'm kind of curious. That those are some of the strategy elements I think we're going to see companies like yourself and others start to really think through in the future. So we're going to watch closely, Asheesh,
Yeah,
for sure. What you guys
you know what? Hey, beyond the ecosystem, I think you're going to see traditional large players that are going to say, listen, we need to get our act together here. And just like you saw with the internet era, you saw these big legacy companies try to transform and try to adapt. And I think you'll see potential acquisitions from big, large companies, banking firms, financial firms that want to, try to catch up and get into this ecosystem. I think you'll see that, hey, this is real. Regulation has come. Adoption is, skyrocketing. We need to get our act together.
Well, listen, you guys can follow Evernorth over at Evernorth XYZ. I'll just bring up their website just so you know. Learn a little bit more about what they are doing, their team, everything that is going on over there. Check them out. Asheesh, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great having you on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Of course, we will make sure and drop some links down in the show notes before we cut this out of here. But remember, guys, if you're not part of the XRP family around the podcast, you should be. And the way to do that, of course, is subscribe. Share this out with the other people, because I think there's a lot of people still not fully vested or understanding what's going on in the digital asset treasury space. Check that out as well. We will catch you next time right here on the XRP Pod. Take care.